What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Malik Washington, back at it again with another short episode of the BMB. I hope everyone is well and pray that all of you are in good health, good fortune, living a good life. If you're going through trials and tribulations, I hope you learn from the lessons that come with those trials and tribulations, hoping that at some point when those things happen to you again, you'll have a much better understanding, but also you're more well equipped to handle those issues when they transpire again. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to keep this episode quite short. This was something I relatively wanted to talk about in a previous video prior to the one that I made before this one. It was going to be the prior video, but I decided to go with the other topic instead, because this one was just going to be relatively short in giving my opinion in regards to Chicago Mayor's Lori Lightfoot leaving the office, because I am a Chicago native as well as resident myself here, born and raised. And quite frankly, I was born in the era between Mayor Daley to Rahm Emanuel to now Lori Lightfoot. And I want to say that I'm not quite happy with neither one of their leaderships. So it's not a matter, again, for me, it's not a matter of skin color, because I know that's the first thing people think about when a person of color gets in office. They immediately think, well, when you criticize them, at least in today's time, that's the way most people think now. They interpret things. When you criticize people for their lack of leadership or their incompetence or their inability to complete or fulfill a job, it's automatically assumed that, well, you have some type of prejudice against them because of the color of their skin, or you somehow think the entire group can't lead, all that jazz. And to me, I just wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think many of us can deduce that when people don't do their job, quite frankly, they're not meant to be in that particular incumbency. But unfortunately, we live in a world where we claim we want to hold people accountable, but some people, because they are of a certain admixture or they are of a certain protected group, you can't really say much about them, neither criticize them. So they feel inclined to basically do everything that goes against what is quote unquote accountability. And so, as many of you all know, and this happened like 2-3 weeks ago, but Lori Lightfoot basically lost the running against the rest of the candidates for the mayoral candidacy to be mayor of Chicago of this year going forward. And quite frankly, she believes she put up a good run, but she also came out later and she believed that mostly the reason why a lot of the people didn't give her a second term or a second chance is because she's a woman, she's gay, and she's black. She is the trifecta of struggle, apparently, when it comes to being a person in office. And apparently having this trifecta of an identity gives you this superpower to believe that because you're all those things combined, somehow you're immune to criticism. You're immune to someone telling you that based off of the statistics, based off of reviews, and based off of what you have done overall for the city of Chicago, a lot of people did not want you back. And it didn't matter the background, whether if you were Republican or Democrat, if you were liberal or conservative, if you were black, white, and in between. If you didn't vote for Lori Lightfoot, there was clearly a reason why. If you did vote for Lori Lightfoot, there was clearly a reason why, right? Even in spite of the fact that Lori Lightfoot had more cons than she had pros as far as being in the running, some people still stuck by her. And typically that usually happens with most candidates with politicians, you name it. They have that main base that doesn't seem to break unless they just completely default from their base and they just go, totally left, and they don't do exactly what their base asked them to do, or their constituents. Typically, everyone has a good chunk of people that are fixed, and they probably won't leave them because they feel like this is the best candidate to go all year round or for a first or second term. But Lori Lightfoot, to me, struck me as someone, when she was in office, she wasn't someone that couldn't necessarily take accountability, while also being this person that was enforcing rules, laws, and regulations she herself was not even following either. Even during COVID-19, with the same situation, telling everyone to stay in the house, wear masks, be 6 feet apart and all these different things. But you catch her dancing in Lollapalooza. You catch her without her mask on in certain areas where it was crowded. And it's just funny. And it's not just her. We've seen quite a few people who are, liberal or leftist, and maybe even some right wingers who do the same thing, where they sit here and they have all this moral superiority about, caring for the people, caring about the neighbors. But then all of a sudden you catch them doing the exact opposite of what they required everyone else to do. And see, to me, when you enforce rules, I believe you yourself should follow those rules too, because you are the epitome of what you enforce. Lori Lightfoot did not embody what she enforced. She is your run-of-the-mill leader who likes to enforce things on people, but none of it applies to her. In so many words, because I am a public figure, because I am important, because I lead this country, I deserve to have these things. Similar to a black politician that we know who's actually in Congress, she's one of the people that believes in defunding the police. Yet she herself believed in, and I forgot her name, so maybe some of you guys know who I'm talking about, but she's very vocal. She's typically on like CNN, MSNBC, and she's usually running off at the mouth about how, defunding the police was important because obviously the police lacked a lot of training. They don't know how to treat black citizens and all this jazz. But she was so gung-ho about defunding the police, not giving them necessary funding, but yet she was so quick to hire a private security force, white and black indifference, in order to protect her. But she wanted to defund protection for everyone else who had the absolute right to be able to be protected by those who wanted to protect them, their fellow citizens. And so, yet and still, she was such an advocate, such a what's the word I'm looking for? She was such an apologist for this type of situation, that she felt like, I can just say whatever I want and it doesn't mean anything. Nothing comes behind that. Lori Lightfoot strikes me as the same person. She came into the game as a woman, as a gay woman, as a gay black woman at that, assuming that because she was all those things, no matter what she did everything right, nothing wrong. You couldn't criticize her about anything. Even to the point to where when white reporters even tried to ask her certain questions, she would even prevent those reporters from asking her certain questions because she believed that they were racially charged against her. And so she said she would only answer the questions of those who were people of color, more specifically black people. That I had a problem with, because ultimately reporters are there to do their jobs. Sometimes the reporters can be quite abrasive. They can be impatient. They can come at you. They can come at you like sharks. It's part of their job to do that, to press you about questions, things that you're uncomfortable with, maybe even to try to get leaks or scoops, anything in order to get the story. They're going to do that. But let Lori Lightfoot tell it, because they were white, automatically they were racist. They were prejudiced. They were all these different things. Not to mention the biggest chunk, and I think this is what really took her down and why she lost the race, is because Lori Lightfoot, like a lot of these Democratic cities, like to create what I like to call misdirection and a misdiagnosis of the problem. They love to say, when we as Chicagoans, we live in different areas of Illinois, right? We know the areas that are dangerous. We know where to go. We obviously know where not to go. Not every place is dangerous, but every place has the potential to be dangerous. Not every place is not every place is unsafe, but there are places. The places that are unsafe have the potential to be. But the places that are safe have the potential to be unsafe, and they have been as of late. Most of the places you wouldn't think were getting robbed, that where shootings weren't occurring, where people weren't getting harassed or anything like that, it's happened in droves under her leadership. Granted, many of the problems that Chicago has was not inherited. Was not created by Lori herself, right? She inherited problems coming into this. But as we all know, when you're a leader, you take full responsibility of what happens under your watch from then on, from then, right? A lot of people would compare President Biden to Jimmy Carter, right? Because of how he thinks, his policies, his politics, how he views the world, you name it, right? His whole thing about green new energy, that sort of thing. They would compare him to Jimmy Carter, but we would never say that whatever Jimmy Carter did under his tenure, President Biden is responsible for, because it was Jimmy Carter who was leader during that era, not Joe Biden. In the same respect, what happened with Richard Daley is Lori Lightfoot is not wholly responsible for. But if she decided to come and be chosen by the people to be elected as mayor of Chicago, then yes, she was going to inherit those issues. But on top of that, and this is what she missed, you came in as someone whose feet would be put to the fire. In so many words, if you screw up, it's specifically your fault. It's no one else's fault because it's under your watch. The onus is on you to now take up the torch and be a leader. In spite of how people may think of you, in spite of how hard it is going to be, in spite of how shitty or how nice people are going to approach you, you as a leader have to stand up, be firm, walk tall, and be honest about yourself and about how you're making decisions, and whether if you're being a team player and if you're being respectable to those that are under you. But even in that, Lori Lightfoot couldn't even keep her staff. A lot of people were leaving, black and white. So much so, she got into arguments even on national television during those meetings. But let her tell it, because she's black and she's gay and she's a woman, she was devoid of criticism. She was devoid of being lambasted about her leadership. And she thought that because she was this trifecta of a person, she couldn't be touched. By that meaning, her position couldn't be touched. She couldn't be removed. And see, that type of hubris is what gets people put out in the first place. She apologetically believes in her identities, and that's fine. But we should not be basing everything off of what someone looks like, what their sexual orientation is, or anything of the sort when it comes to an incumbency. Because when you're looking at a job description, you're not looking at someone's color. You're not looking at how old someone is. Well, maybe for some people, depending on what the job is. There are certain discriminatory factors for certain jobs, depending on what it is that you're doing. But color is definitely not a factor, unless there's just a person out here who doesn't like to look at people that are of a different skin variant than they are. Nonetheless, when we're measuring your leadership, your color has nothing to do with it. When we're measuring your leadership, your sexual orientation has nothing to do with it. When we're measuring your leadership, you being a woman has nothing to do with it. We live in a completely different time. Women have the options and the ability to do just as much as men can do out here. Some women choose not to take up those positions, but that's fine. They still have the viable option to do so. They just choose not to. Lori Lightfoot was one of those people who tried, and she became the woman mayor of Chicago. And that's great. Nobody's knocking that. I don't have a problem with that. But that's not my concern when I elect for someone to be a mayor. is the fact that you're a woman. Or you being a woman or a man has nothing to do with it. The question is, can you do the job? But in her eyes, no. I could do the job. I'm just not going to do the job according to how you want me to do it. Even though we voted for you to do a job that you were unwilling, clearly unwilling and unable and incapable of doing. Crime went up at an all-time high under Lori Lightfoot's leadership. Went up at an all-time high. Recruiting efforts for policemen, extremely difficult. Because especially under the whole BLM Act and everything else, of police officers, just even for the pettiest of reasons, being held accountable for some of their common practices. A lot of people don't even want to become police officers because the American people are so sensitive now. It's hard to police anybody. Who wants to be a part of that? Now, some people will take up the efforts and do their best to try to police whoever they can. But quite frankly, the way you all have carried on these past few years, who would want to police you? And I'm not talking about just one group of people. I'm talking about everybody. Everybody's so petty now. What can a police officer really do but baby you? Treat you not like an adult, but like a child. And I'm not saying that everything that the police officers do is correct. Absolutely not. Some things can change. Absolutely. There's always room for improvement, but not just for police, for the people as well. But Lori Lightfoot didn't seem to really care much for the police, in my opinion. And I don't even think she cared for the people who were suffering the most in these very high crime areas, because we had been begging for years for this woman to put more police out in the streets. And it seemed like there were less of them in the streets. They were more so in concentrated areas like downtown Chicago, maybe even the suburbs and things of that nature, but nowhere near the urban cities. Over 80% of crimes in Chicago get unsolved. And part of that is because a lot of police aren't present. In fact, gangs now outnumber the police in the state of Chicago, the city of Chicago, good grief. Yeah, in the city of Chicago, gangs outnumber the police. On top of that, some of our people who know the criminals are unwilling to tell who's out here doing what. So now what are we left to do? We're left to fend for ourselves at this point. And Lori Lightfoot, I believe, has created this environment for that to happen. Thankfully, she's no longer going to be in office and someone else will. But if we get another person like Lori Lightfoot, who has the similar politics, such as C.B. Johnson, that's going to be a problem. And if Vallis can't do his job either, then he's no better. So while it's cool that we got this woman out, who's going to come in and be different? If you're just going to come in and introduce the same politics that she did, you shouldn't have even ran in the first place. But some people seemingly can appreciate those types of politics in spite of the bad that comes with it. But I think the overwhelming majority of us want to live in a state where there is peace. There is a lack of crime. We're not saying that crime can be completely eradicated. But what we are saying is that, can you come in and have a strategy to reduce the crime rate that is in this city? Can you come in and be a solution and not a problem? Can you come in and be accountable? Own up to your mistakes. Own up to your decisions and have faith in them so that we can have the same type of faith that you do and be amplified by that. But we can't be amplified by that if in turn all you do is that when someone gives you constructive criticism, you immediately say, well, they don't like me because I'm black and I'm gay and I'm a woman. That has nothing to do with it, ma'am. Because guess what? Even people of your own color have criticized you more so than the people that are non-black. But you want to say it's about your color? It has absolutely nothing to do with your color. It has to do with the fact that you were a terrible leader. And that's the bottom line to that. I don't know what else you're good at in life. And I'm certain you are good at something. It just wasn't this. And I'm honest in saying that. Lori Lightfoot is just someone who just wasn't, she was a lemon that just wasn't worth squeezing. She did not do a proper job. And she just wasn't someone that was worth leading this generation into a new era, or this city into a new era. Because it seemed like under her, Chicago got a lot worse. It didn't get better. So hopefully, whoever the new candidate may be, hopefully they come in and they do a lot better. But if they come in with the same politics that Lightfoot has, which in our case, it's either Vallis or CB Johnson, then we're shit out of luck as Chicagoans. And Chicago has to fend for themselves, especially when it comes to criminals. Because it seems like we give more access and leniency to the criminals than we do to actual citizens themselves. And they're just running rampant, doing whatever the hell it is that they want to do casually. They're emboldened. And the politicians and the DA, they don't give a shit. Another thing I didn't like when Lightfoot was in office was when under the Trump administration, Trump offered to give federal assistance to Lori Lightfoot to help reduce some of these crimes and resolve some of these cases a lot faster. And because of political dissidence between her, Pritzker, and Trump, neither one of them wanted Trump to come in and so-called save the state of Illinois. So because you had that much bravado, you couldn't accept help in order to save your fellow citizens, the ones that you were leading. Because clearly under your leadership, crime was still going up, and even unto the point to where you finally got called off of the running. It's up at an all-time high. I mean, it's malicious at this point. So Lori, she was terrible, but I'm glad she's out, because now Chicago has been unfettered by her leadership, her tenure. She's done. So let's see what happens. I hope for the best for our city, but there's no telling what's going to happen from here. I surmise it's probably going to get worse, but if we get a halfway decent leader, he may be able to alleviate some of the symptoms that we had incurred as a result of the previous leadership. Maybe one of them can alleviate it, but if not, we're doomed. So I'll leave it right there. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malik Washington. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good day or good night wherever you reside, and I thank you for listening if you got this far. Stay tuned until the next episode, and with this, I say peace.